who are you exactly? Why don't you tell me like who you are and what your role is and all that stuff?
Of course. My name is Ryan Bodani, and I am the chair of the Secular Student Alliance Board.
Okay, what does the Secular Student Alliance do?
Yeah, we do a variety of things, which I can go into more detail, but the essence is that we try and provide a community, a safe space for people who either don't believe in God, they're questioning their faith in God, or they simply believe in the separation of church and state. And as you may know, if you've been to college, there are a large number of groups on campus that cater to people who do have faith, right? Whether it's some form of Christianity or another religion. Oftentimes, you can find a group of people who believe as you do, and you can have service events, you can have community building events, you can have just a community, right, that you can be a part of and share your faith. But people who lack faith or who are questioning their faith often don't have that, and SSA exists to try and provide that, right, to provide a place so that people who like I said, they might lack faith, can find each other and therefore not feel quite so alone, right? And can do some of the same things, community building things that I was discussing that the faith groups often provide.
Interesting. So, how did you get involved in all of this? Like, what's your story? Were you always an atheist or what?
Yeah, no, I was always an atheist. I grew up in a very religious part of the country, the kind of rural Michigan. And, I went to college. I participated in other groups, social activism, environmental justice, but there was no SSA on campus, and I didn't know that there even was such a thing. As an adult, I discovered SSA, and I was thrilled because I thought this is exactly what I would have loved to have had when I was in college, and I am so thrilled that other people get to have a community like this and a space like this. And so I joined the board of directors, and I have been trying to help the organization, right, with the work that it does, as a board of directors often does, to support the work of the organization so that we can grow and hopefully over time become, a group that has a chapter on every campus. That would be the vision. That would be my ideal.
Yeah, how long you been involved as a board member?
Since 2022, so about a year and a half.
Okay, that's
Sorry,
cool.
2.5 years. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't. I of course grew up Jehovah's Witness. Most people are probably aware of that who are watching this, but I didn't really have any kind of community after leaving. I recognize how important community is today, of course. Interesting. So I'm sure you know of like Crew. Is that the name of it? Crew.
That's
The
what I've been told. Yes.
Yeah.
Campus Crusade for Christ.
Yes, yes. And also TPUSA. Is that kind of an
Yes.
equivalent also?
Turning Point USA. Yes, those are other organizations that exist on many, many, many campuses.
God,
Yes.
we have to get, we have to like start evening it out a little bit. So anyway, I understand you guys partnered with the Satanic Temple recently. Is that right?
Yes, that is right. So the Satanic Temple, it's basically after school Satan clubs. Folks may or may not be familiar, but there are things that are called good news clubs that Christians will sometimes start in their public schools, maybe even their elementary schools, right, or middle schools, very young, to promote faith in God. And so the idea of the after-school Satan clubs, and there are only a few in the United States so far, there's not so many, but the idea is that what's good for the goose is good for the gander. If you're going to be creating clubs in elementary schools to promote Jesus, then there also ought to be a place for people to explore reason. And there is a rigorous curriculum. It's very science-based. It's something that we have worked to help create, and we're very proud of it. But it is not, right, rooted in faith in a higher power. And so that's something that we've been working with the Satanic Temple to roll out. And one of the effects of this is that you see a nuclear response from the people who live in these communities. They're like, how could you possibly? And as you may know, the Satanists don't explicitly believe in the the Christian idea of Satan, right? Like an agent of evil. They promote progressive values that are very similar to my own or our own. And, the Christians, maybe they don't understand that, but like their reaction, I think, betrays, the double standard, right? They seem to think that, well, having a group for Christianity, that's obviously good, but having a group that's not Christian or questions Christianity or just isn't based on like a theistic worldview, well, we can't possibly have these people speaking to our young children. That's like indoctrination.
Oh, they get bent out of shape. Yeah.
Yes, they do.
All right. I don't know how much you want to get involved in politics here. Do you want to at all, or do you want to avoid it?
No, I'm happy to.
Okay. Okay. Cool. So, long
Yes.
and long ago, back in 2015, I started my channel, I think in 2016, actually. I felt like, I don't know, I got caught up in like the anti-SJW crisis. I'm sure most people who've been watching YouTube for a long time probably remember that. And I was like, I was leaning to the right. And I feel like it was almost like a pipeline that sucked people in. And it
Yep.
took me forever to kind of get, like, pull myself out of that. Where were you in that moment? Like, what were you thinking as all of that was unfolding? I think you and I probably align identically with our politics at this point, but where were you with this?
So, I started my career advocating for social and environmental justice. And so, very much, progressive, right? I believe, and it's rooted in my belief, which, is not a religious belief, although often religious folks will claim it as their own, that human life, right, has value and that people deserve dignity. However, and this is what I spent the first 7 years of my career doing, oftentimes around polluting facilities or industries, you will find people who are marginalized. They're poor, they're low income, they are minority communities of some form. And the factories are located there because they lack political power, because they are to some extent socially considered more expendable, right? Their health problems are less important than the society, kind of like at large. It's okay, right, for them to have shorter lifespans because they're sucking in stuff that's giving them cancer. So this could be like diesel emissions. It could be like, emissions from a petrochemical facility. This is not right. You take poisoning anybody is immoral. Poisoning people because of who they are, because they happen to be vulnerable, that's doubly immoral. And so that's one manifestation of our society's, discrimination towards different communities. And that's something that for a long time I considered to be immoral. And so there has been through fits and starts, and sometimes we take, a step forward and two steps back, right? There have been backlashes that have pushed human rights and dignity for all people backwards. But I generally support efforts to recognize the dignity of others. And that extends to my own actions. So I used to have two kidneys. Now I have one because I gave my spare kidney away to a stranger.
Wow. That's crazy. How long ago was that?
That was about 2 years ago. So that was
Wow.
November
That
22.
is putting your money where your mouth is if I've ever seen it. That is crazy. Wow.
Um, because I was like, well, I don't, like you can live perfectly fine with one kidney. And like, honestly, like I did the research. I learned that, yes, there'd be like some temporary discomfort for like, in my case, it was like pain for about 3 days. And then I didn't really feel any pain anymore. The surgery is very non-invasive. You recover very quickly. And I had no control over who the kidney went to because it wasn't a directed donation. It wasn't like my friend or my family member who needed the kidney. But I felt like I have an opportunity, right, to do good in this way, and I ought to do that. I would like to see Christian conservatives put their money where their mouth is in a similar, way, right? Isn't this something that they ostensibly espouse, right? Is the dignity of human life and the belief that all life has value. Well, then, why does it seem to stop at birth? Like, what about social welfare programs? What about, economic assistance for people who are in need? No, they don't care about any of that. And I think, again, it betrays the hypocrisy of their ideology.
When I was walking out of kind of the anti-SJW, mess, I think the thing that got me was there was an Australian YouTuber at the time that said he was opposed to, there was some kind of a, what do you call it, like a referendum or something where they're going to decide if like gay people should be allowed to be married. And he said he's going to vote against the referendum, against gay people being allowed to get married, because he wants to stick it to the SJWs. And it's like, are you even pretending anymore to be like left leaning? It sucks
Yeah.
you in, man. It's just not good. So anyway, I have another question for you, on another note about like a moral problem I was thinking about recently. I think I went to American Atheist Convention a couple of years ago or something, and I saw some Jehovah's Witnesses there. And do you remember like all those Trump supporters putting like stickers on those gas things, like the gas,
Pump.
just yeah, gas pump. Oh my god, could not think of the word pump. Anyway, you remember them putting them on gas pumps, and it was like I did this. It was like Biden pointing to it and it said I did this and all that.
Huh.
I was at the American Atheist Convention and I saw some Jehovah's Witnesses, and there happened to be some stickers out there called anti-witnessing stickers you can put up behind Jehovah's Witnesses that basically say Jehovah's Witnesses are the world's largest doomsday cult and things like that, you know. And it gets
Yeah.
Jehovah's Witnesses to go away. What is the fundamental difference? I've had a lot of trouble kind of squaring this in my head and you know, coming to terms with what the fundamental difference is between the two. Is that something that our side should do? Put up stickers like that for Jehovah's Witnesses? And if so, do we have a right to complain about Trump supporters doing it? What do you think?
I don't have a problem with Trump supporters like putting stickers in public places, and I don't have a problem with people putting up stickers behind Jehovah's Witnesses. Like that's one approach. Not everybody is comfortable with that. Not everybody has to do that. Other folks might want to actually engage the Jehovah's Witnesses. Sometime a few months ago, I had a long conversation with some Jehovah's Witnesses about LGBTQ,
Uh-oh.
IA rights, like trying to impress upon them, and they were quite stubborn, right? In you understand their point of view in asserting that no, it's not their bigotry, it's God's bigotry. It's almost like they're saying, no, we don't have any agency. Like we don't have any moral, like autonomy ourselves. We can't say what's moral or immoral. It's just granted to us by God. But of course, that's a choice, right? You are choosing to subscribe to a moral ideology. There are many in the world that you could subscribe to, and many people subscribe to even religious, ideologies without accepting all parts of it. But they really did not want to admit, right, that what they were espousing was discriminatory. I'm not sure, right, that conversation changed their minds. It didn't need to, from my perspective. I'm not sure that a sticker is going to change their minds. I don't know that it needs to, from our perspective, or Trump stickers, for that matter, right, putting them up in public places. This is either way not something that I find objectionable.
Interesting. Yeah, I think the goal with it is to get them to stop standing where they are. Like every day I go to like the train station, the subway,
Hmm?
and there are two Jehovah's Witnesses standing there trying to shill their stuff, you know. So the goal
Yeah.
of like anti-witnessers is to put these stickers up so that they don't stand there anymore, kind of limiting the locations that they can spread their nonsense at. But like you said, they bring in almost nobody through door knocking or street witnessing or whatever. It's like an extremely low number compared to, you know, children that they raise in the religion or whatever
Yes.
else. So I guess it doesn't matter as much, but I don't know. It's kind of a moral conundrum because I've had a problem with Trump supporters doing that. Like morally, I think that, I mean, they're kind of breaking the law, right? A little bit.
So if you are like taking a sticker, let's say a pro-Trump sticker, and you're putting it on a private gas station, right? So you're saying they're breaking the law. Vandalism, right? Is
Yeah.
that what you
Yeah, I would
might
say
call that?
vandalism.
So then they're taking a risk, right, for their beliefs, and that's something that gas stations often have video, that they may end up, paying a consequence for. Or they might have to like do some community service. Yes, technically illegal. I'm happy to like let the legal system deal with this, and the private owners of gas stations decide whether or not to press charges.
Basically, the way I viewed it was, I guess in the strictest sense, those anti-witnessing stickers are propaganda. I mean, I guess propaganda isn't always bad necessarily, but
I love that you brought up that word
right, was
because,
that?
well, I feel like there's a lot of people on the left who are asking, how did this come to be? Right? How did we get like half the nation, supporting this idiot, right? This manifestly, he doesn't even
Yeah.
care about his supporters. Where did this come from? Propaganda. Look, propaganda is around us. When you watch your favorite television show, right, on Netflix or network TV or whatever, it's how is it funded with commercials? What do you think those commercials are? They are explicitly, people are paying lots of money to try and manipulate you to purchase something, to vote for somebody, to do something, right, that you wouldn't have otherwise. We are awash in propaganda. And like you said, it's not always bad. How do you think the SSA like gets new members when we're tabling on a campus and we have information about SSA? What do you think that is? Are we giving a balanced case for like the pros and cons of joining SSA? No, right? We're explaining why it might have value to you, and it's up to you, right, to decide, as a prospective member or whatever, whether this speaks to you. You could absolutely consider that propaganda. I don't think that people are often thinking of, their navigation through the world as swimming, right? Just swimming in the vast ocean of propaganda. But the reason why I want to highlight that is because, again, it highlights the necessity and the value of reason and critical thinking. Please don't just watch a late night commercial about steak knives or whatever and be like, oh, okay, I need those things. Like, think about it. Like, think about what buttons they're trying to push, right, to manipulate you, so that then maybe you do want steak knives. That's perfectly fine, right? What I want is, I want people, when you're aware of the issue, then you can make actually decisions that are in your best interest, given like a consideration of the pros and cons. And that includes who you vote for. It includes, other things that are influenced by propaganda. The news media, might aspire to be unbiased, but everybody who works in media, every single person has political opinions and has opinions about the news and the way that the world should be. And oftentimes it has value if you know what those are, because then you can adjust for that, right? And you can say, well, such and so says this, but I know that they're right leaning and they might have a motivated interest, right, to be making this case rather than an unbiased interest to be making this case. Ultimately, as you navigate through the world, you have to do so with your own best judgment. And what you will find, hopefully, is that over time, as you exercise it, as you, think critically, your good judgment will improve over time.
I'm currently of the opinion that right wingers and left wingers, like everybody, basically shares the same moral values in the United States, everybody, but they're working off of a different set of base facts generally. So, for example, my brother, I just found out he's like kind of gone down a Trump rabbit hole, like really deep,
Uh,
unfortunately.
I'm
But I
sorry.
believe that he's doing the things that he's doing because he thinks it's the right thing to do. He's just like terribly, horrifically wrong. Do you think, or do you think that like the majority of, or many at least, many Trump supporters and extremists and stuff out there are just like, just morally bad people?
Okay. So, really great question. So let's think about this. What does it mean to be morally bad? Does it mean to be morally bad that you have like, incorrect views of the world? Does it mean that you have beliefs about the way that the world should be that are abhorrent, perhaps? Or is it your actions, right? Does morality vest in the things that you do in the world, perhaps motivated by your beliefs, but maybe not? You can have, put differently, like I think you're saying, don't we all kind of like want the world to be better?
Yeah.
Um, don't we all like, have, we aspire to, treat others with respect? Many of us do. Some of us don't. Some of us are, like bad people, morally, but many of us want to make the world a better place. And the rub comes in when you think about societal, like entire societies destroying people, right? Destroying communities of people through pogroms, right? Or through ethnic cleansing or through something like that. That requires a lot of social, societal support, Right? It's not just individuals who are doing that. It's large numbers of people, many of whom individually believe that this is, in the larger scheme of things, the right course of action. The danger comes from when you are pursuing immoral aims, justified by, arguments rooted in this is for the greater good, slavery, whatever the case might be, right? People can convince themselves that morally abhorrent things are morally justified. So the fact that we might all agree that like the world should be better is kind of beside the point from my perspective. That's nice. What do you mean by that? How do you define what the better world is? And there you do get into some different values, and that can lead us in horrible directions. So yes, you can point to like wrong facts. So many, I don't know, QAnon supporters believe that Democrats, consume adrenochrome and, they're drinking the blood of children and all this stuff. Like that's a wrong fact, right? That has that factual belief shapes their attitudes towards Democrats or progressives and might in the future justify mass violence against them. But people are also motivated by values. I had a very interesting conversation a few years ago with somebody who is a fervent supporter of gun rights, where we ultimately came down to the root of it, which, as you might expect, was I value, right, the human lives that are taken away by guns, and especially by the, easy availability of guns and the vast number of guns, more than I do the recreational value, the safety value, the lives that might be protected by guns, because data tells me, right, that, the loss of life outweighs the lives saved, and, the recreational value, these are more subjective kind of judgments. He had a different, right, value set. And it's very hard to convince people through facts that their values are incorrect. Often what you need to do is to find some kind of shared value, foundational, maybe it is a belief in the dignity of people. And then we can discuss what is the best way to pursue that. And then we can get into facts, but always rooted in some kind of shared value.
Yeah, that's
But
been yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
That's been one of my problems is like
Yeah.
anti-vaxxers. Like their
Yes.
primary complaint, as you were pointing out, is I have the liberty to do what I want, but what they do affects society on a broader
Yes.
scale. So where is that line, right? Like is should we allow them to damage society by not getting vaccinated, not wearing a mask, and going into a crowded room and sneezing all over everybody? Or
Yeah.
should we tell them they can't, be in that room with so many people or whatever? I guess that's the separator. And also, as you pointed out, an ends justify the means mentality. I think that one is probably the most destructive value in society, in my opinion, right now.
There's always, yeah. I'll just say, like, there's always a tension, right? People want to, I don't know, sometimes they aspire, like, they want to believe in a world where, like, all the values that we hold, they're not in tension with each other. Like, my rights need not conflict with your individual rights or with, the greater good of society. These are always things you mentioned, like, kind of like in a crowd, like fire in a crowded room, right? With the First Amendment, like, there is speech. Yes, we believe in freedom of speech in this country, and yet, for very good reasons, that belief is not absolute. We do have, speech that entails consequences, and this is true with almost any right that you can point to, and that's because balancing rights enables rights. You
Yeah.
cannot have absolute rights that are unbalanced because they conflict.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You're right to swing your fist ends at the tip of my nose, as they say. I know I've been studying World War II a lot lately. We're coming to the end of our time, but I thought it was pretty interesting, so I figured we'd go on for another minute or two if that's good with you. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I've been studying World War II a lot lately because I wrote about it recently, the church's involvement and all that. And I've
Yeah.
come to the conclusion that, like, they banned swastikas, for example, in Germany after all of that
Mm.
went down, and they banned endorsement of Nazi beliefs and things. And it's like, really, they just kind of drew the line slightly more to the left because, as you said, we can't yell fire in a crowded theater. Like, we have limits on our free speech. It's just, what do we consider imminent violence? Germany considers imminent violence as endorsing fascism, for example. I don't know. I just thought that was kind of interesting that people scream about free speech absolutism, but no one is actually a free speech absolutist fully. There are lines for everybody. You can't tell somebody to go assassinate another person and believe that's free speech, for example.
Yes, absolutely.
But I don't know. And people are just kind of stuck in these little bubbles, and it's trying to pierce those bubbles is difficult. That's why, well, around political times, around elections and stuff, you find, your uncle trying to cram all these beliefs down your throat because you wouldn't get all of these messages otherwise. And they're trying to pierce those bubbles. They're trying to break into these areas where they wouldn't otherwise be. And I don't know, it just seems harmful to me, and you got to counteract it. But anyway, anything else you wanted to mention before we split ways?
Just on your last point, I mean, I grew up in an area of the country where everybody believed in God. I was constantly being told that I should believe in God. So I developed kind of an allergic reaction to evangelism. I'm just like, leave me alone. Like the arrogance, right, of thinking that, you've got it all figured out and I need you to, like, I don't have a brain myself. Like, I need you to tell me how to think. That informs how I do advocacy, which I've done for much of my career. I'm not telling people what they should believe or how they should think. I'm saying, this is how I believe. This is how I see the world. This might appeal to you. Here's how it kind of, based on what I know about, how you feel or your values, this is how it might intersect, etc. But never with the presumption that, like you described with the uncle, kind of like jamming, you cannot compel somebody else to believe as you do. Or sometimes you can, especially if you have kids and you have years, like that's why do like Baptists tend to like grow up to Baptist parents, and why, it's because, this is what they have been raised on. But in a, like a short interaction, even over years, right? It can, you can't control, right? It's not within, what you can control is your own journey, and you can engage with others with a sense of, like, again, respect and dignity, and you can share how you feel and why. But I don't like being treated like I don't have a brain, and I just imagine that other people feel the same way. And so, again, that has informed how I have advocated for, my place in the world, my lack of faith, even though, right, I often find it very frustrating to engage with religious people. I do try to take a step back and not be contemptuous, right, and demeaning and belittling, because I'm aware that everybody's on their own journey. Religion provides a lot of value to people in ways that I might not fully imagine or comprehend. Everybody's journey is their own. So again, what that does is that it instills humility, right, in me as I interact in the world. And I think that, as I was describing with our kind of decentralized approach with SSA and allowing chapters to do what they want, I think that also manifests in our work, and that's work that's worth supporting.
Totally. Absolutely agree. We're running a fundraiser pretty soon for the SSA, and we're hoping to raise tens of thousands. That's the current goal. So what does the SSA do with donations? Like what types of things you put money toward exactly?
Great. So I'll go through the list.
Okay.
I talked about, we build community, and we do that in a variety of ways. One of the most basic is that we have chapters, right? We have chapters at colleges, at universities, sometimes at high schools, etc. And those chapters, they require resources for tabling, for food, for events, for things like this, right? And so we provide that. Sometimes we also have staff that work with them to help grow their chapters, right? So kind of provide mentorship as the students become, leaders in their communities. And all of that requires resources. We also have service programs. So you might be familiar with service programs, right? Maybe cleaning up after a hurricane or a natural disaster or something like that. Often these programs are organized through religious organizations. We have one that is not religious, right? That is still dedicated to service, to making the world a better place, to providing help for people in need who may have suffered, this tremendous like natural disaster. But it is secular. And so that's our secular spring break. We have others that are organized by chapters. So that's another thing. Again, it's not free, right? It requires resources. We have events like our national conference that bring people from across the country together so that they can meet each other. And again, perhaps not feel so alone, so that they can exchange ideas and their passions and grow, return to their campuses with new enthusiasm and inspiration. Listen to speakers that, maybe they find quite inspirational, hopefully so. Learn about organizing in this kind of shared context. Not free. We provide recognition and financial assistance to students. So scholarships this year, we gave, I think, between $40,000 and $50,000 to students to help pay for their education, which is a form of recognition, right? Recognizing their leadership on campus, but also sometimes, and again, folks may or may not be aware, if people they don't have faith, but their parents find out, or their school is a religious school and they find out, they might lose the financial backing that they had otherwise. And so scholarships might be particularly important, right, for these students. And so that's another that's another thing that we do that not free. We do advocacy and litigation on behalf of our students on occasion. So for example, under the Trump administration, the Department of Education, they changed the rules so that, discrimination by religious organizations on campus was allowed. We sued, to stop that. The notion is that, well, it's religious freedom to discriminate should not be allowed if you're receiving funding from the student body through a public university. And that lawsuit is still ongoing. And again, as people may or may not be aware, lawsuits are not free. They take resources. And then finally, we provide a lot of educational resources for the students and the public at large. So you're talking about webinars, you're talking about, educational events. We, create written materials. All of these things are made available to our students for free, but they cost us, and that is, worth investing in. But again, we need help to do that. And to give you a sense of where our money comes from, more than 90% comes from individual donations. We don't have foundations that fund us because they consider us a religious organization or perhaps too controversial. We don't get employee matching from corporations. We don't get any kind of corporate grants. We don't get funding from the government. We get funding from you, right? From individuals who feel like this is important and worth funding because, we are creating the change perhaps that you want to see in the world. You want to see a world where it's all right, to not believe in God or to even just simply believe in the separation of church and state, and for students to have a place where they can meet and organize with other students who feel the same way. That wouldn't happen without our existing donors, our potential donors, perhaps like you, who would invest in this work. So yes, there is a fundraiser that's coming up on Jimmy Snow's show starting on November 16th. It's going to be a 24-hour fundraiser, and we are hoping to raise tens of thousands of dollars to support this important work.
Do you guys have any work that you do to spread awareness about atheist issues or atheists generally or anything?
So what we do is, again, going back to first principles, we try and create a safe space on campus. And then depending on the people who are involved in a group, right, on campus, they may be more or less, right, kind of like oriented around trying to explain, right, a lack of faith, which could include, atheism. They might have debates with religious groups on campus. They might get involved in political activism or not. They might just be a campus group that has a relatively small public profile, but meets themselves, right, to maybe commiserate about their experiences growing up and the difficult road that it took for them to come to where they are today. So as a national organization, SSA does not have a fixed view on atheism or any other kind of flavor of lack of faith, or even like we are open to people of faith, right? We have people on our advocacy committee and people who advise us who are interfaith leaders. Our executive director Kevin will go to their conferences every year of people who are more or less school chaplains, right? And who he will go right to those spaces because sometimes, especially with religious schools, these chaplains often end up being, the folks who are kind of like speaking to non-religious students, and they need to know how to do so because they're not always bigots, right? They might have the best interests of the students at heart, and they need to better understand how can we better serve these students, even within a religious context where perhaps if they are openly, non-believing, they might be kicked out of school, right, or lose their scholarship or something like that. So, as a national organization, I think it has value for us to perhaps be a little bit more agnostic about, where we fall on that spectrum. But our student chapters sometimes do, right, openly advocate for one flavor or another of secularism, and that's perfectly okay. No, just thank you for having me on.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it. And I'm sure we'll talk again pretty soon, right?
All right, looking forward to it.